and welcome to Market Insight. Yes, this is the one-stop show that gives you all the information you need with regards to the commodity market as well as the currency market. I'm Adesua Iramoseli, and I welcome you this beautiful Monday morning. Yes, what better day is there to talk about business than on a Monday morning? So let's talk a bit about what is happening in the commodity market. We have, of course, we'll be decoding the signals in the Nigerian commodity market, and the Associated Foreign Exchange Incorporated, AFEX, has predicted higher domestic commodity prices in 2024. And at a certain event in Lagos, AFEX unveiled their 2024 commodity outlook, predicting elevated prices for domestic commodities despite a global downtrend. This annual report analyzes key factors affecting supply and demand, aiming to guide the market players and also the policy makers. While the global market saw a 24% price decline in 2023 following a global shock, Nigeria faced distinctive challenges. Inflation and economic reforms led to slower growth of about 0.63% in the first 3 quarters of 2023 compared to 1.90% in 2022. Now, despite global trends, agricultural commodities in Nigeria saw price hikes due to low production and high international demand. Maize, one of the commodities, experienced the highest volatility, reaching a peak of about 550,000 naira metric ton and closing at the end of the year at 480,000 naira per metric ton. Now, this increase is attributed to decreased fertilizer usage, a lingering effect of the Russian and Ukraine conflict. Now, global commodity prices are predicted to decline in 2024 and 2025 due to improved supplies and expiring trade policies. However, factors like the Middle East conflict could significantly impact this trend. Energy prices are expected to decline, while agricultural commodities might see a 2 to 3% decrease, assuming no escalation in the Middle East occurs. Now, in contrast to the global trend, domestic commodity prices in Nigeria are predicted to rise throughout 2024. And export commodities like cocoa and sorghum are expected to jump by 50% and 20% respectively due to decreased production. Now, key consumption items like maize, paddy rice are also projected to increase by 25% and 40% respectively, despite a projected 4% rise in paddy rice production. Now, this outlook highlights the complex interplay of geopolitical, economic, and environmental factors impacting the commodity market. Yes, to discuss this issue, we have our guest who is an in-house analyst. He is Dr. Idahosa Osamanze, the Vice President of Femi Wash Media Limited. Good morning and welcome to the show, Dr.
Adesua, good morning.
Yes. Now, what are your first thoughts about this prediction?
Well, it's a prediction. It can come true, it might not come true. So that's the way I look at it. But I think the fundamental basis for the assumptions for me may not stand really something that we have to hold on strongly to, because you are looking at one factor on the other hand, and you are looking at another factor at the other hand. Even when we see that there's going to be some crises as arising from global shocks that may likely affect the cost of production, or that may affect production as it were. But we also have to look at it that the Dangote refinery complex is also on, and that petrochemical is also supposed to produce urea that is also used basically for fertilizers. So if fertilizer issue is going to create a problem because of the Ukrainian-Russian war, we also must be expecting that the production here in Nigeria of fertilizer, which of course has started since last year by the petrochemical complex of Dangote is also going to affect what we're doing. What I didn't see in that report is the fact that we also did not mention that apart from this global shock and fertilizer usage, there's also no mention of the increasing threat from local people in terms of security, whether in the core north, banditry is still on the rise. We're still seeing clashes between communities. We're seeing a resurgence of the terrorists right there in the northeast. All this could affect production. But what for me it is to see the bigger and brighter opportunity in all this. I said in one forum the other day that we have so much that we can leverage in terms of agriculture. We have a young population which is average 19 years. And if everybody who is able-bodied is taking advantage of this global gap in food production, prices may be stable or can likely go down really for us in Nigeria.
All right. Now, Dr. Idahosa, one of the factors that that was highlighted, as one of the reasons for this surge is the economic factor. Now, what economic policies, would you say has contributed to this hike in prices?
Well, it's obvious. There's only one fundamental variable that is affecting pricing in Nigeria, and that variable had been the price of forest. Because almost everything we do, we are reliant on importation, and therefore people will have to have a more demand for foreign exchange, especially in this first quarter where a lot of people are returning back to school in Europe and in America, in Asia. A lot of foreign exchange demand, of course, is going to be there, and then a lot of pressure. We can now see that in the market as we speak. Where the Naira continue to fall, both at official window and the parallel window. Now, these are the real issue that is affecting us. So you have to import almost everything that you need. And the farmer who are also depending on relying on foreign importation of fertilizer components also will find that this foreign exchange also affect them. So the input that gets into farming this year is also going to determine the costs per product output at the end of the day. So those are the economic environment in which this is playing. And don't also forget that lending also is, the rate of lending also high in the macroeconomic environment, that if people are going to borrow money and the rate is also high, and if the rate is likely to go high, unfortunately, the MPC meeting has still not held, the first one for this year, to know whether rates are going up or going down. So that also can affect what happened, because if some people have to take money from the bank to do farming and the rate is high, of course, it will affect the price per output at the end of the day.
All right, talking about meetings, NESG, which is the Nigerian Economic Summit Group, they held a meeting and they brought about the 2024 roadmap. Right? And some of the highlighted points was the fact that there will be improved productivity in the agricultural sector and transformation of productions in the production sector for job creation and global competitiveness. Now, these are, things we get to hear time and time again, but how can they, practically speaking, be implemented?
Well, it's a very difficult challenge as we speak. It's also to understand the global climate, as it were. And we're dealing with a generation, Z, whose philosophy about life is completely at variance with the two generations that are ahead of them. And that is the real issue. Now, how do we convince Generation Z to embrace agriculture is the biggest task that government has to face. Because you're seeing a generation of young people who want good life, but they want it easy.
Right.
And agriculture is not easy. And this is actually the thing that is affecting the low trend in terms of productivity in that sector. Because almost all the people who are used to doing agriculture, they're all growing older and old, and therefore they cannot be as productive as younger people. But a lot of young people are not attracted to that sector. And I was very happy last week at the World Economic Summit Forum that the Vice President already also alluded to this, that one of the basic reasons why a lot of people are not taken to agriculture is because of the crude way it is practiced. So what level of investment is going to get into this value chain that people can have access to machinery that will make agriculture very attractive to the young people? This is a conversation that government will need to ask. And I think it will be important that we have to engage with these people. We cannot just begin to mine out policy for people which we have not interacted with. We need to sit down with Generation Zs and ask them what will attract them to do agriculture, for example. And it is understanding what their philosophy about agric is that can help government to actually design policy or program that can drive this process. Throwing money in that value chain will not help and will not solve the problem. It cannot increase productivity because the person that you want to do the farm must first and foremost be ready to go to farm before you put money on his head. Now, if you are putting money on the ground and the person is not willing to go to the farm, then how will you realize that heavy, high-level productivity that is being predicted? So this is where the challenge is. We must understand the variables in this sector, that it's not just about government writing policies or setting money aside. No, it's also to engage the mind of this generation of young people who want good life and don't want stress at all.
Indeed, indeed. This is Generation Z, yeah, so they want the good life, but of course it is imperative to find ways to make the agricultural sector more attractive, you know, so that more of the young people can, you know, get working. All right, now let's look at the global challenges. You know, we've had so many global challenges in recent times, and that has been highlighted as one of the challenges of one of the reasons for this surge in prices of commodities. Could you speak to that?
Yeah, there are a lot we spoke early on the other show this morning about the challenge in the Red Sea. You are looking at also the terror attack on ships that are African-bound and Asia-bound by the Houthi rebels. Now, this is also a phenomenon that is deeply impacting the supply chain network. So if the supply chain network is affected, definitely, of course, it's going to affect prices. And that's one problem on the one hand. We are having the Israeli-Palestinian crisis, which is assuming now a greater proportion and intensity as most Arab countries are also rallying around to take on Israel to see that the state of Palestine is created. Now, this crisis has been brewing in the last 1 year, and we are looking at what is happening. Started with the Hamas attack on Israel, and Israel reprisal attack. Now it's now broadening into what the issue has actually been, which is the creation of the Palestinian state. And a whole lot of people are very, very sympathetic to the cause of the Palestinian and say, let's have a Palestinian state. But Israel is saying, look, you cannot have a state within a state, and that's not going to be possible. And if Israel maintains its stance and the crisis in the Middle East blossom into a full-scale war, that, of course, will be a pressure on the global market, not just Africa. So worldwide, everybody will feel it. Because if the Middle East is unsettled, a whole lot is going to happen. Both flight and the waterways will be affected, and that will create some destruction in the logistics for goods and services on the one hand. Now, the Russia-Ukrainian war also is not end in sight. And we're also seeing this happen. And what impact is also displaying is the fact that if that crisis is not resolved as quickly as possible, the tension will continue to affect the prices of goods and services globally. And then also don't forget the contribution of the geopolitics, the struggle of power, struggle for supremacy between the big China and the big America. So all this will consistently impact the sale of goods and services in the coming years, except that the world, by every means, will embrace peace, and then these issues are put to rest, and then productivity can be up again.
Indeed, indeed. It was even highlighted that one of the challenges, of course, is the war in Ukraine. You know, Russian and Ukrainian war is one of the challenges.
One of the issues, again, I didn't really mention is also the issue of the global debt. Almost every nation is indebted, and it is up to their neck like this. And this is a problem. And when you have global debts like this, and nations are owing, now you see the capacity of nations to borrow is also reducing. And so if people are not giving you money, then of course you are not able to actually also purchase. And then those who are producing, who are supposed to be wealthy, will be finding glut, because you will have a situation where you have excess of goods pursuing so few money, which is deflation. So the deflationary trend in some of these producing countries or highly productive nations like China and the rest of Asia will be affected, because the goods will be in the house, nobody's going to buy them, because these other person who should buy, they are no longer credit worthy, and nobody is willing to give more money to people who cannot repay. So this is also going to affect the condition of the commodity pricing in 2024 going forward.
Indeed. Now we've highlighted all the challenges. Now let's talk solution. You mentioned the inflation rate as one of the challenges. Now, how can Nigeria be self-sufficient when it comes to food?
Well, it's something that has been agitating my mind, really. You see, the problem we have is that we assume too many things in Nigeria. And because we assume too many things, we are not scientific about our approach to issues. We come up with very simplistic arguments about some certain things. I hear in some quarters very well, you know, somebody said to me and said, see, banditry is not allowing people to go to the farm. It's just an escape route argument. Because you're actually not going to the places where this banditry is actually happening. That people are not willing to go to farm because of banditry. Or are there other remote causes why people are not in the farm? Nobody is engaging with those arguments. Now, if I were to take the place where I come from as an example, growing up as a child, I get to my local village and I see farm. I can see my father producing yam, and they are using pickup to carry yam every market day to the market. Today, now in that community, I cannot, if they put all the yam produced in my community together, it cannot even fill one pickup van. So the issue in my village is not banditry.
Okay, so what is?
So this is where we need to engage ourselves. So we have a very simplistic way of addressing issue in Nigeria. So what's the reason? People are not going to farm because bandits are everywhere. But the real reason is not banditry. It's much more than banditry. So we need to do a study. And it is this study we need to do to study the lifestyle of Nigerians. And it's when you know the lifestyle of the people that you will be able to predict why some certain actions are not taken or some other actions are taken. But when you just sit down in your house and you say, oh, because they are bandits, a soldier told me a story in Morocco about 2 weeks ago. And he said he led some people to Baga to do beans farm. Him had about 300 bags of beans last year. And I was worried. That's Borno State. Baga is where Boko Haram is at its peak. Now we're having somebody who is not even a northerner, an easterner, who is having a farm and having up to 300 bags of beans in a war-torn place. Now, what does that tell me? That it's not always about war. That people are not going to farm is not because that there is war. And these are the things that we need to really put in perspective. People talk about farmer-header clashes in Nigeria. And of course, the media has over-amplified it. Even when local communities are having issues, community to community, it's regarded as farmer-headers crisis. Now, this simplistic way of addressing issue, for me, is a big problem. And because we are politicizing some of this challenge. So we have intertribal conflict. If you go to Benue, there is intertribal conflict. If you go to Taraba, there is intertribal conflict. So it's not as if that herdsmen are coming from one zone to come and attack people here. Now, these people that are doing this fight, whether in Benue or in Taraba, they are living in that place. They are not imported from elsewhere. So rather than engage these people to look at what the local solutions are, you see, we just sit down in our office and say herdsmen. And when you have the idea of herdsmen, you are thinking of people who are migrating from Borno or migrating from Katsina to come to Benue to fight, or from Mali. That's not the situation. We need to address issues scientifically as a people. Then you can now begin to look at it. What is the changing lifestyle? And how do we write policies to suit this changing lifestyle?
Indeed, that's very insightful, Dr. Idahosa. Now, let's look at the impact on the populace. Because globally, prices are to decrease by 2 to 3%. But here in Nigeria, it has been predicted to increase by 25 to 30% in 2024. How can Nigerians cope with this increase?
Well, I think government who has been trying to put in place some stopgap measures to address some of these challenges that we face. Don't forget, these are just predictions. They are not actual. To say, oh, we're going to expect this one. And don't also underplay the role nature plays in some of all these things. Because all these issues we're talking about, they are also equal to what is produced in the farm and the level of yield. And that's important. We must also bear that in mind. Now, if the weather is clement enough this year, like it has started to be with early rains, now you're going to have bumper harvest. Now, if there is bumper harvest, that will also affect the supply-demand pool. So because if there's more demand, supply, then of course prices can also be addressed. So we must also not forget that impact that nature can have in some of the things that we're doing. People are just preparing to go to the farm. So as they are preparing to go to the farm, nature has a role to play. Now, if there's no flooding, for example, that can destroy people's farm, especially in that belt, and in the middle belt and in the northeast. Now, you will see there'll be abundance of harvest. So this we cannot predict with some degree of precision. So what we are saying is that, look, it's likely to look this way. But as we must also not overlook some of the things that can also undo some of these variables that are expected to push the prices up. But that said, it's going to be a very huge challenge, because if you have price increase, it will reduce the disposable income of the average person or worker in Nigeria. And if we don't have capacity to buy, then those who are producing will not be able to sell much. So this is also a problem. I used to tell people, yes, Nigeria is about 200 million people, but you also have to look at it, 200 million, and how many people actually have disposable income to buy. So the size of the market may not necessarily be the size of the population. It's the size of those who have disposable income to buy. And those people, they are very few. Now, in the side of government, like yesterday, the federal government is setting up a committee to review the minimum wage for federal workers. Now, maybe put state workers and all these things put together, they may not be up to 10 million people working in government sector. So those are the people that this wage increment are likely to affect. Now, what's also the degree of this increment is another thing to be examined. Because if you look at what they currently take and what the inflation is taking from what they currently take, you see they are almost going home with nothing. Now, if you come to add another 25% of inflation to what's already having, then are we seeing a government that is able to increase wage by 100 or 200% or 2,000%? So that you can put more money in the hands of the average worker who is able to buy something in the market. All these dynamics is going to create a very complex economic scenario for 2024. But it's not to lose sight that some beautiful things are also happening within this space. And if CBN is able to make do with its act to regulate what happened in the financial service sector, and then we can see clearly and transparently how forex are moving, whether from NNPC and other imported areas, that banks are not sabotaging the effort of CBN in terms of this redistribution of the forex, so that we can actually know what the exact value of the naira to dollar is. Because that seems now to be a mystery. We don't know the exact exchange rate. We don't know the exact value of the naira corresponding to either pound, euro, or dollar, because the market is deliberately manipulating that regime. And there seems to be some collusion between the banks and the parallel market operators, because we need to know what's the exact source from this bureau de change. Like it's done in every other country. If it is possible for us to actually to say, okay, know those who can trade in dollars, and they are official, and they are registered by the CBN, and we're not seeing people on the street trading dollars, we will be able to actually look at where these movements are coming from. Then you can determine the actual price of the commodity. Because what is going to determine what pricing is and what people can do is that thing that is happening between the regulatory framework of CBN and the banks, in my view.
Indeed, you were chipping in the whole currency exchange rate aspect of it, and that is going to be the next segment of the show. We hope you can stay with us for that. And still on the commodity market, still on this topic, you earlier mentioned the fact that these are just predictions. Yeah. Right now, since they are just predictions, what is informing these predictions? And of course, predictions are to see that we don't get to that point, to see if we can put measures in place to ensure that these predictions don't come true, don't become our reality. Absolutely. How can that be done?
Absolutely. Yeah, you see, in strategic management, environmental scanning is critical to a very sound policy framework. What you're doing is that you are trying to look at your environment, and you're seeing what are likely to play out in the environment and what likely impact is going to have. Now, once you are able to scan your environment and see the development, whether in terms of government policy, whether in terms of foreign relations, whether in terms of, a shift in lifestyle or culture of the people, then you are able to say, okay, this is likely to happen. Now, the whole idea of prediction is to help policymakers to have an alternative look to whatever policy that is in place. So this is what this report is meant to do, is to keep government officials on the toll, the regulators, the policy writers, those who implement policies, to say if this is the outlook for 2024 and against the projection in our annual budget, this and this may not work, or government may need to address some basic issue. And then, of course, we are talking about where to cut costs, how to move fund around so that you are able to ensure that these very ugly predictions don't happen. So that is how it should inform our decision. It is supposed to guide policy making, policy implementation, and evaluation.
All right, hold that thought, Dr. Idahosa. We'll be going on a break to just show you the reports we've been able to gather with regards to the commodity market. Stay with us for this.
The high cost of the commodity is formed as a result of lack of bad road, high price of fuel, and also a season. These are the major three or four major challenges that causing the high cost of the price, and insecurity also too. When you look at the high cost of the price at this time around, like tomatoes, because I'm dealing with perishables items like tomatoes, onions, tatashe, rodo, and other vegetables items. Let's look at tomato. The tomato now, we are in a season of tomato. The price is not comparable like last 3-4 months ago, when the basket of tomato will be selling at the rate of 50,000 naira due to the seasoning period. But now we are in season. The basket of tomato will sell at the rate of 23,000 naira, 24,000 naira per basket. That's the area of a season. But all these things, it is happened as a result of a high cost of the fuel price that we have now, the transportation. Before, we normally pay 450,000 naira per truck of tomato from north to Lagos here. But now, due to the high cost of the fuel, we are paying 1,500,000 naira per each one truck of the trailer that can carry our tomato coming to Lagos here. So you see there is a huge of different gaps between before and now. So this thing has actually caused the high cost of the price in the market. The same thing with onions. Bag of onions was sold at the rate of 150,000 naira 3 months ago. But now we are in a season of onions. The onions bag was sold at the rate of 70,000 naira, 75,000 naira. So that is the difference. But at least along the line again, we are still in the inflation of the food price of the market, food price. Why? Because if you look at before, and what is causing all this thing? Number one, we are lacking an insecurity problem. We are lacking issue of fertilizer. Most of the farmers, Nigeria, statistically, Nigeria will have about 5,000 farmers who are farming into the country. But now, the farmers are now up to 1,500 in number. Why the other ones have been in captivity or have been kidnapped. So there is no any way you can consider or concentrate on 1,500 naira, expects to feed over 200 million people in the country. So this thing has caused a problem to the nation, has made the price of the food have been increased. If you have 5,000 people who are farming now down to 1,000, how did you expect those 1,500 are they going to feed the country? There's no way. So that is why we call on government to look into it, to put more effort on insecurity, so that our farmers who are in captivity will be released to go back to the farm, to go back to their various places to continue farming. For instance, one farmer can produce over 10,000 bags of rice or bag of maize, and that person was in captivity. You see, it's a big challenge. This one caused the high cost of the commodity into the country. Likewise, fertilizer. We have shortage of fertilizer into the country. What farmers need is fertilizer and insecurity. Fertilizer is important, but though government, we call on government to provide it enough to the farmers. After providing it enough to the farmer, they should make the price to come down for a farmer to be able to buy. If you look at the fertilizer before, the bag was sold at the rate of 5,500, coming down to 8,000, 10,000. But now, bag of fertilizer is almost to 40,000 naira. How many bags are you going to buy? One bag, if you compare one bag, the bag of fertilizer now and before, it will buy almost 5 bags for you. So there is a difference. So that is why we need government to provide it enough and put the price to come down, to be low, so that everybody can be able to buy it and go back to the farm. We are exporting our tomato. That is why I've told you tomato has season. It's a seasonal period. We have neighboring countries like Ghana, like Benin, like Cameroon. All these countries are coming to buy tomato in our hand when it was a season. But by the time that we are not in a season, we do import their own, like Benin, Cameroon, one area called Ecom in Benin and Cameroon area. They normally used to bring some tomato to our country. They even bring it to our market here, down to our market here, Malto International Market. So that is why I told you it's a season period. When our own gone, their own started, they import they will import their own to us here in the country. You see, that is why I've told you the major challenges that we are facing in this country is one is insecurity, two is lack of fertilizer. In area of agriculture, I'm talking an area of agriculture, because when there is enough fertilizer into the farmers believe in fertilizer and seed also. And seed. We need seed, we need fertilizer, we need security. These are the three major challenges. If government can focus on this by the special grace of God, in the area of food, we have been settled. So we need government to put more effort on security, try to drive away those bad elements, kidnappers, banditry, and so on and so forth, so that to allow farmers to go back to their various places and continue doing their farming.
Welcome back. That was Mohammed Bello Gidado. He is the Financial Secretary of Mile 12 International Market. Now, to you, Dr. Idahosa, what do you make of all of what the Financial Secretary of Mile 12 International Market stated? I mean, he mentioned the fact that they are in need of seeds, fertilizers, and security. I mean, just give us your thoughts on it.
Well, I think it's just stating the obvious, the things he has mentioned. They are very basic things that, of course, all of us know really is affecting the food market in Nigeria. Logistic issues, not just the fact that the petrol prices are high, you're also having bad roads where, of course, you have to have a truck travel all the way from Kebbi to Lagos. Rather than drive for 24 hours now, they have to spend 72 hours, sometimes above that, to be able to get to Lagos because of bad roads. And then, of course, insecurity also affecting some of all these logistic issues. Then, of course, the price of petrol. This is what we're talking about. Is the exchange rate that is determining what petrol is going to cost, because that downstream sector also have been liberalized by government, and therefore the market forces are expected to determine what prices we pay for petrol. Now, one area that we also will need to pay attention to is the role of the research institutes in all this value chain. because we seem not to be prioritizing the research institute. Because Gidado mentioned seedling, for example. Now, I remember listening to a professor of agriculture who was a Nigerian teaching in Malaysia, and he was giving a comparative analysis of the yield of rice, for example, in 1 hectare of land in Nigeria compared to Thailand. And he said in Thailand, 1 hectare of land can give you about 16 tons of rice. Whereas in Nigeria, it can only give you 3 tons. So the gap is also wide. So we also will need those who are in the agricultural institute to work on how to improve high yield seedlings. Because this also could really accommodate this gap in the supply of foodstuff. Now, if we have these people doing very germane research to see how much we can increase corn yield, rice yield, beans yield, then of course farmers can do 1 acre of land and you are having so much to produce or harvest from it. So that's one side. Now, we're also looking at fertilizer. Most of these things are now done by urea. Just imagine that the 4 refineries that Nigeria had, they're all working. And they're all working at full capacity, also producing urea. We can have enough fertilizer from our crude here, which we are processing, whether from Port Harcourt to Warri or to Kaduna, and then, of course, the Dangote refinery that is just by the side here. Now, all these things are things that we can actually harness from the crude that God has given to us, apart from also relying on the waste around animal husbandry, if they were also done well. Now, this is where, of course, again, when they talk about this farm settlement, the Ruga concept would have also helped, where you see animal dungs are concentrated in one place and they can actually become valuable for farmers, that you can easily harvest them. But this one that you see cattle that are moving on along the road, and then, of course, you cannot harvest their dung for fertilizing purpose. Now, all this, we must find a way around it as a nation to write policies to see how we can customize some of all these things. That when you are doing farming in the same area, like poultry farming, like pig farming, you can actually harvest their dung, and then they can also be converted to fertilizer of a sort. So all these are things that can be done in the interim. But again, is also to see investment in cold storage facilities. Because you are in season today, you can imagine the price differential. 3 months ago, a bag of tomatoes, according to Gidado, is selling at 50,000, and today is selling at 23,000. So this price differential, how do we accommodate it? Is to take the excess we are producing in this season and then convert them to the out season. In that case, you are able to moderate the pricing, even for the farmer. Because the price in season is a disincentive for the farmer. They would have preferred to sell off season, where they make more money. Because for every businessman, the real reason you go into a business is to make profit. And if that profit is coming in their drove, then of course the motivation to do more will just be there.
All right, now looking at Africa as a continent, do you think we are doing enough to support each other when it comes to food, and what can be done basically to strengthen our, intra-African trade?
Well, that's been a problem in itself, trade between Africa countries, and we have not been too good to ourselves because we are still tied to the apron string of our SY colonial masters. There's more trade between the Francophone countries with France and Europe than they do with fellow Africans, same with the Anglophone countries. So the issue of African trading with themselves is something that is very critical, and that is why we keep emphasizing that the Nkrumah dream of a one United States of Africa had to be realized, where we can combine resources to address the issues that faces the continent.
Indeed. Now, let's quickly look at the currency market. We see that the foreign exchange rate at the parallel market as of today, the 29th day of January, I beg your pardon, 2024. The USD, the US dollar, was buying at 1,415 naira and selling at 1,425 naira, while the pounds was buying at 1,770 naira and selling at 1,790 naira. The euros, on the other hand, was buying at 1,500 and selling at 1,520. Now, Dr. Idahosa, we see that in the parallel market, these prices continue to increase. You know, just like you earlier mentioned, we need to find where this operators in the parallel market get this dollar from, because it is becoming a challenge. What are your thoughts about it?
Yeah, the CBN governor the other day made a very fundamental remark, and I think it was at the Nigeria Economic Summit Group where he said that the actual value of Naira has not been determined. And this is because of a whole lot of things that has happened. And I think there's a probe that is currently going on in the CBN and then PPCL to see how all the dollar earnings of Nigeria in 2023, how they were channeled, who bought them. You see, because it's when we are able to establish that people are doing things officially, you will be able to regulate them. And that's why in other countries, it's very clear the tie between CBN and those who sell dollar is strong. When you walk around Lagos, if you go to Tinubu Square there now, you will see Aboki with calculator selling money. All across Nigeria, you go to the airport, you see them. It can't happen in any civilized country. It's only Nigeria. The first thing that CBN should do is to empower the Nigerian police to arrest any man who sells dollar on the streets. You see, until you are able to enforce that rule, you will not be able to determine the exact value of your currency. Because if you go to the UAE, for example, they are below the change, but they are all connected to the United Arab Emirates Central Bank. And they can only sell at the rate that central bank determine. Here in Nigeria, you are negotiating rate at bureau. You call Malam and say, how much are you selling today? He say 1,400. You say, I will sell 1,006. He say, okay, bring. That has to stop. Now, if you don't regularize the activities of the parallel market and ensure that only players that have computer and system that CBN can monitor sell dollars, you will not be able to determine this. So you will know where dollar is coming to, and you will know how dollars are going out. So we will establish what is the exact market value of this dollar. So because whatever measure the CBN government will take at this can only affect the banks, which CBN directly oversee. So this is a problem. So the CBN need to be decisive and make a policy statement that for you to sell dollar, you must have a shop, you must have an address, and then you must have the license of CBN. And then do a quarterly return to CBN on your operations are dealing with ferrets.
Very well. All right. Thank you so very much, Dr. Idahosa Osamanze, for joining us on Market Insight today. We appreciate your presence.
It is my pleasure to be here with you this morning.
All right. That has been Dr. Idahosa Osamanze, and he is our in-house analyst right here at Souk News, and he is the Vice President of Femi Wash Media Limited. And on that note, we draw the curtain on Market Insights today. Many thanks for joining us. We hope it has been insightful. Join us again tomorrow, same time, same station, for an even more insightful session. I'm Adesua Iramaseli. Have a lovely day.